The Israel-Hamas war has drawn a lot of attention away from what Putin's army is trying to do and spectacularly failing in Ukraine. Not only is the Middle East on fire, but so are entire countries around the globe. So my question is, did Putin, with the help of Iran, engineer this? I'm Granniopteryx. As they say, cui bono. When you're looking at a bad situation and you're trying to find some sort of a reason for it, first question, cui bono? Who benefits? The West has been obsessed with the Ukraine war up to now. The media's been saturated. The politicians have talked about nothing else. But with the absolute horror of the Hamas attack, at least the general media have turned their heads pretty comprehensively from Ukraine. As they say, if it bleeds, it leads. And Israel is bleeding pretty badly right now. All of this is no doubt a great relief to Putin, especially among those whom we might call his colleagues. Several commentators have said that Putin will not be defeated on the battlefield. The only way, they say, that war is going to stop will be when his colleagues take a realistic look at the numbers of dead and the land lost, and perhaps even the recent delivery of some pretty effective long-range artillery, and remove him themselves. And at the moment, it's entirely possible that Putin's colleagues are too busy watching the bonfire of the Middle East to bother about Russia's humiliation over that strategic pile of rubble that used to be called Avdiivka. And in this might lie the key to how the invasion happened in the first place. So I have this theory, which is pure guesswork. I admit I don't have any exclusive access to secret information or anything like that. However, I can list a few random facts that I've come across, and perhaps together we can make 2 and 2 into 4. Then again, possibly 5. I'll leave you to decide. Okay. In 2006, Putin invited Hamas to talk to him. That's 2006. One visit between 2006 and 2022. But since then, they've been to Moscow quite a few times. They were there in May 2022, just after the beginning of Putin's original invasion, when that started to hit the buffers a little bit. And then they were back again in September of 2022, just after Ukraine had regained most of the Kharkiv Oblast and was advancing on Luhansk and Donetsk. They were back again in March 2023, when Russia was taking huge losses and it was obvious their campaign was going nowhere. And then they were back again. And this might be very significant in September 2023, September the 10th, I believe. And that was around 3 weeks before the Hamas assault. Now, is all this connected? Well, as I say, they saw him once in 2006, and then after that, there might have been various connections, but there was no official visit. And then suddenly, between 2022 and now, 4, 5? No, I don't remember anymore, but quite a lot. All I can do is make that observation. And then, as we know, Hamas and Iran are, they're like that, aren't they? And Iran and Russia are, at the moment, like that. So I reckon it's reasonable to assume that they're all like that. Yeah. And I'm interrupting myself to remind you to click that like button. I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds, also Twitter and Gab, where I let you know when I've uploaded new videos. But if you subscribe to the channel on YouTube, you can click the notification bell and they'll let you know as well. All the links are in the description, including links to donation sites. I'm always grateful for donations, but really the best thing you can do for this video is like it and share it. And as I said, subscribe. Okay, back to, hell. The Iranian government have a visceral hatred of Israel, which is actually rather odd because the people of Iran generally not. And apparently there have been some Israeli flags being flown at football matches and things, but that's another matter. The leadership of Iran do have an absolutely psychopathic hatred of Israel. Putin has a psychopathic hatred of Ukraine because, well, Ukraine wasn't acting to his script. And possibly both of them have a psychopathic hatred of Zelensky himself. Putin because Zelensky wasn't acting to script, and Iran because, well, Zelensky's Jewish, isn't he? So having Hamas go out there and kill Israelis is a win for Iran. It might distract Americans from giving Ukraine so much aid. And from Iran's point of view, it will, well, it'll give the boys in Hamas some time for R&R with a lot of unwilling Jewish virgins. Almost like paradise, hey boys? I haven't forgotten, though, that none of this would have happened if Israel had been better prepared. So let's just take a look at Israel's relationship with Russia. Or, well, rather, Netanyahu's relationship with Russia. A lot of people have noticed that Israel has been notably silent with regard to the behaviour of Russia since February 2021. The general explanation was as follows. Israel has been in a perpetual state of war with various armed militias camped in Syria and Lebanon, but a lot in Syria. And they've had this pretty unrelenting habit of lobbing rockets from their bases along the Syrian border in the north. So every so often Israeli planes go over there to bomb the encampments and military installations. But the Russians have been propping up the Assad regime for years. So they are in charge of the area. The Russians are there because they're using the Syrian port of Tartus as a car park and a maintenance hub for their Mediterranean fleet. And so Israel's ability to take planes into Syrian skies depended on the Russians not shooting them down. And that's the reason which has been given for Israel's silence over the Russian military action in Ukraine. At least that has been Netanyahu's policy. I don't know about the average Israeli. I don't know how the average Israeli felt about it. I know that Netanyahu himself has been colossally unpopular recently, to the point where there have been mass demonstrations every Saturday night for months in almost every town and city in Israel. But he couldn't be ousted because of the totally fair Israeli electoral system that gives parliamentary seats to a lot of little parties. The whole idea was that nobody would be left out, but that meant there were a lot of nutcases in the Knesset. When Netanyahu lost the support of the major parties a while ago, he just assembled a majority for himself out of a lot of fringe parties run, in most cases, by incompetent religious nutcases. And because most of them don't know what they're doing, they confined themselves to making nutcase pronouncements and left everything else to Netanyahu, who was almost running the government single-handed. So it was already grinding to a halt. And obviously the bureaucratic systems, which might have given better warning about activity in Gaza, must have been compromised as well by that. So now I'll ask, how much communication do you think Putin and Netanyahu might have had with each other? And my answer is, I don't know. And neither does anyone else right now. But they would have had to liaise in some way, if only about the planes over Syria. And that means that they or their assistants would have had to communicate regularly. So how about this wild speculation? How about Putin telling Netanyahu, either directly or through other channels, that he had met Hamas several times, and at last on the 10th of September, and he can absolutely guarantee that they're not going to do anything? And Netanyahu allowed himself to be lulled into a false sense of security because he'd become a dictator and found himself a colleague of another dictator. So how much further up the totem pole can an egotist climb? But what he didn't reckon on was that you can't rely on a dictator. That's what Stalin found out the hard way. Putin would be quite happy to run a distraction for his own problems by engineering bigger problems for someone else. I'm sure you'd agree with that, even people who like Putin. Well, I'm glad to say that Putin has even bigger problems right now with the delivery to Ukraine of the ATACMS. What a great name that is. As for Netanyahu, there are people who say he engineered this as an excuse to attack Gaza. Judging from what some of my Israeli correspondents have said, his political career is over. Even the religious ones are vowing not to vote for religious parties who supported him. It's just a terrible shame. They had to find out why religious parties are dangerous this way. And as for Putin, no words. No words. Okay, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.